We're predictive. Now, in fact, we are predictive in the sense that we generate a lot of forecasts. But it would be better if we were both accurate and predictive. And that we're not so good at. And I will say that, to the extent that I've missed certain things, and it was easy to miss certain things during this economic cycle because it's been so bizarre. This recovery has been so different from past economic recoveries. And so I'll give you an example. Generally speaking, as the economy recovers from its previous recession, the price of money, the price of many things, but the price of money, which is the interest rate, tends to drift higher. As the economy is recovering, there's more demand for money in the form of, for instance, loans, and so the price of money, the interest rate rises. But this recovery has been totally different. So if you look at 30-year fixed mortgage rates in blue and 50-year fixed mortgage rates in red, during this cycle, if you look at the late 1990s on this chart, you'll see that interest rates were rising, that's what you expect. If you look at years like 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, the previous growth cycle, interest rates were rising, trending higher during that period. This cycle, and now we're in our 8th year of economic expansion, interest rates have been falling almost the entire period. Could not have predicted that. To the point where the 30-year fixed mortgage rate is around 3.5%, the 15-year fixed mortgage rate is around 2.8%. Unbelievable. And you would think that with the prevalence of these low interest rates throughout the duration of this cycle, that Americans would have jumped into home ownership. But as you know, this has really been a renter's market. Home ownership has plummeted, now to 63.4%, near a 51-year low, as it turns out. Renter market. If you take this line and you flip it upside down, you'll get something that looks like this. This is U.S. private new multifamily construction. Multifamily is apartments and condominiums. You see the peak 10, 11 years ago? That's mostly condominiums. That was the ownership society. People were just racing for condominiums, and not just to live in, to flip or whatever it happened to be. People were buying second, third, and fourth homes. You see this latest peak? That's apartments. And we know it's apartments because you can see what's being built. You walk around the Inner Harbor, you see that construction site. They're building a 44-story apartment building. If you go across Harbor Court Hotel to the other side of Harbor Court Hotel in Anirban, 6-story apartment building with a really humongous footprint. Apartments everywhere. Driving the home ownership rate down to 63.4%. More of a renter nation. The only thing I want to point out here today, along this dimension, is that home ownership is going to come back in America with a vengeance. Why do I say that? Mere passage of time. Today, our largest and most educated generation are the millennials. If you define that generation as being born between 1980 and 1999, after their birthdays this year, they turn between the ages of 17 and 36. So the central tendency of that generation is in the mid-20s. Ask yourselves, what is the most common age in America? 24. We have more 24-year-olds than any other age. Dime a dozen. Where's the second most common age in America? 25. Where's the third most common age in America? 23. Got a lot of 20-somethings. When you got a lot of 20-somethings, you got a lot of renters. It makes life difficult, of course, as they are obnoxious. They must know that they can hear their music through the headphones. They must know that. It's obvious they don't care. They don't care. You look at them, look at them, try to make it obvious that you can hear their music. They don't care. But here's the good news. Here's the good news. And it's my first forecast. In 10 years, those 24-year-olds will be 34-year-olds. I feel pretty good about that. And a lot happens in those 10 magical years. People have children. They get married, often in that order. And all of a sudden, renting is not the best option. One of the other aspects of this is that home prices are rising. People will say to me all the time, Anirban, you're dead wrong. What you're suggesting is that these young kids, these millennials, who love their city apartments, are going to, over the next few years, move to a house in the suburbs? Impossible. It's exactly what's going to happen. Because generations change. Huh? Think about the baby boomers themselves. When you have visions of the young baby boomer, often the parents of the millennials, what visions do you see? Protests against war, minivans with lost paint on the side, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, Woodstock, psychedelic drugs, free love, now Ross Betancourt. on your journey. So people change, and kids are part of that. And more notice that home prices are rising in the most millennial markets: Denver, Dallas, Miami, San Francisco. And so the investor motivation is returning to housing. So this is something that you observe, the return of the American family. So a lot of folks have been chasing the outdoorsy types, the people who are hiking and biking and so on and so forth, 24-year-olds. But in 10 years they're 34, and now they've got kids, and now it requires a whole different kind of experience. American families coming back in large numbers, which brings me to my forecast. Now, one of the things I've said is that it's a consumer-led recovery. That will not change. I do not expect to see any boom in business spending anytime soon. CEO confidence is pretty fragile right now. Now, you do see some investments like, what seem to be investments, like AT&T buying Time Warner for more than $80 billion, or you see Verizon buying Yahoo for $4.7 billion. I'm not talking about that kind of investment, where you take two balance sheets and you make it one, or two corporate boards and you make it one. That's a purchase, not really investment. When I talk about investment, I mean equipment and software, that kind of physical capital. I don't see that. I don't see any boom in exports anytime soon. Global economy is weak. I expect it to remain weak. And I do not expect to see a boom in government spending anytime soon. Though it is true that Hillary Clinton has said that if she is elected, she will spend $250 billion on infrastructure over 5 years and another $25 billion to create a national infrastructure bank to help finance public-private partnerships. Her Republican challenger, Donald J. Trump, has said that he will do precisely twice as much as whatever she would have done, which is oddly specific. But so the point is, there is this building consensus that we need to spend more on infrastructure, but of course that next president has to deal with their Congress too. And I think either candidate will have difficulty dealing with that Congress under almost any conceivable scenario. So it's going to be a consumer-led recovery. Now, the good news is that the consumer for now remains engaged. If you look at household spending, 2/3 of household spending is on services, things like healthcare and transportation. 1/3 is on retail goods. I'm showing you data on the 1/3 sliver. So the horizontal bars represent the percentage change in spending by category. At the top, the internet. Not a big fans of that, are we? Because that means that people are not getting out. They're sitting at their computers. We don't want that. Now the good news is the second category gives you some sense of the fact that Americans are still getting out, even though the internet is there. Food services and drinking places. That's a fancy way of saying restaurants and bars. And also have to explain why we economists almost never hook up, is as we ask you a question like, hey, you come to this drinking place often. By and large, we try to answer the proposition that the consumer is engaged. Few categories are negative. General merchandise stores is negative. That's your department stores. That's Macy's closing 100 plus stores and so on and so forth. They're losing sales to the internet. Electronics appliance stores, that's your Best Buy and those kinds of companies, H.H. Gregg, they're losing sales to the internet. And also to the category called building material and garden supplies dealers, that's your Home Depot and Lowe's. And they're very good at selling appliances. And just trying to take away that appliance market share from some of these other retail categories. So, but still, essentially the process of the consumer is engaged. This is the index of leading economic indicators from the conference board. Look at the last few readings here. You see it's choppy, up and down, positive, negative. Not as clean as in mid-2007 when it was all negative, saying recession is coming. So the index is not saying recession is coming anytime soon. What it is saying is expect still soft economic growth in front of us. And to the extent that there is growth, almost all of it will be consumer-driven. My final slide. Turned out to be a disappointing year for the world. Everyone knows about China and Brexit and North Korea and those geopolitical issues. But we've had problems right here. Corporate profit margins have been slipping, and inflationary pressures are building. So stock market has done very well over the course of time. People who own stocks, and by the way, only 47% of American families own stock. And much of that stock is owned indirectly, 401ks, 403bs, pensions, IRAs. It's not really money people can touch. And often the holdings are quite small, as it turns out. Stock ownership is really concentrated. About 80% of all stock is owned by 10% of Americans. So that 10% has done very well. But those stock prices may not continue to rise. Now, the last few days have been really quite negative on the markets. The market's lost about 3% of its value, the U.S. stock market. But I think that's really because of election uncertainty. It's not because of these dynamics I'm talking about. I'm talking about wage pressures and rising interest rates. And those things generally hurt stock and bond prices. So it's a risk to the economy. Only the consumer is really contributing meaningfully to growth. But the good news is job growth should remain decent in the near term. We ended 2015 with a near record in total job openings, and the number of job openings remains elevated, and we added another 161,000 jobs today. My view is this is the greatest day in the country. And when I look at, sometimes you'll stand up and before a meeting, they'll have to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I will actually, and maybe I should not admit this, when I'm looking at the flag, I'll actually stare at one star and pretend that it's Maryland, and I'll focus on that star. So, I love this day. I'm so proud to be a Marylander. We are the greatest. There's no question about that. We're better looking, we're smarter, we're everything. But we need to tell our story. And many of you do, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I think we do a fantastic job with the resources we have. I'm just saying that we need to invest more resources to tell our story. And the point is, if you say something enough times, people will believe it. Right? We're going to make America great again. You say it enough times, people say, yeah, I buy that. And maybe you like the message, maybe you don't. That's not the point. I'm not trying to be political. You got to say it again and again and again. Virginia is for lovers. No more than any other place. But you say it enough times, people believe it. And Virginia does quite well in the land of leisure and hospitality. And finally, we may be transitioning very quickly from the mid-cycle stage of the recovery to the late stage. The late stage is the period that immediately precedes the next recession. The longest economic recovery in American history was 10 years. March of 1991 to March of 2001. We're in year 8. So there will be an end at some point. There will be some big years economically in the 2020s as the millennials come of age. The people who have been coming over of age in the last 2 decades have been my generation, Gen X. There's not many of us. So the 80s and 90s were very strong economically. The baby boomers were coming of age. There's a demographic component. The next 2 decades, not as strong economically. Gen X, small generation coming of age. But then the 2 decades after that, the 2020s and 2030s, the millennials come of age, big years economically on average. So expect that. But there is going to be a period in which the economy is going to make some adjustments. And I'm particularly worried about 2018 in terms of my model. But that's my last point. I thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today. It's been a pleasure.
Impact be positive or negative that the minimum wage shortage?
Right. So the question is about the minimum wage and the minimum wage going up and what is the impact of that. And there are a lot of economists who don't like even the idea of a minimum wage. They don't like the notion of the public sector interfering with the pricing mechanism. There is labor market demand, there's labor market supply, the intersection sets price, which is wage in this case, and transacting adults should be able to figure out how much they're willing to offer, how much they're willing to accept, and they come to some agreement, why should the government get involved? I actually am not an economist who dislikes the minimum wage. One of our problems in this country is that the labor force participation rate is 62.9%. At least it was as of September. I don't know what the October data are. So we need more people pulling the rope. We want to bring more people into the labor market, more people working. And one of the ways to do that is to say, or be able to say, look, if you look for work and you successfully find a job, this is the least you will make. And studies have shown that, in fact, increasing the minimum wage will bring people into the labor force or back into the labor force. Now, you can overdo it. When New York State passes a $15 minimum wage, statewide basis, $15 is not a big deal in Manhattan. I get that. Not much in Manhattan. But in Buffalo, New York, where the cost of living is 6% below the national average, $15 when it comes to pass and be implemented over the course of several years, is only a big problem for them. And one of the big industries driving Buffalo's economy is leisure and hospitality. They've redeveloped their waterfront, they have several new hotels. Pretty fantastic, actually, as it turns out. But how are you going to support these operations when you're forcing people to pay wages that are that high? Plus, it triggers unintended consequences. We know that a lot of jobs are going to be destroyed by robotics, artificial intelligence, driverless trucks, and so on and so forth. So if you push that too hard, the people who make decisions are going to say, let me buy the technology now, replace the humans right now. But they end up destroying jobs much more quickly than they need to be destroyed. So you can overdo it. But Maryland is moving toward $10.10, I believe, minimum wage over the course of time. That doesn't bother me too much in most contexts. There are going to be communities in Maryland that are affected more than others negatively. But in general, I think it raises living standards, and as long as the economy remains strong, we can absorb it. Any other questions? So that was an excellent one. Tricky one. Yes?
Why is it non-farm employment? Why is it farm employment?
But I said that, Ross.
Oh, I didn't know.
Oh, well, let me repeat it for you. No. Ross is one of my dear friends. He's one of my dear friends. And I freely admit that. I was showing you data on non-farm, because that's the way the data comes to us from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The farm employment data are measured by the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So farm employment data are important. The problem is that the farm employment data are not measured on a monthly basis, and therefore are not additive to the non-farm data, which are. Plus, it's a different survey. And also, because it's not measured on a monthly basis, what tends to happen between readings is the weather changes. So farm employment goes up, it goes down, but not because necessarily the economy is getting better or worse for farmers, but because the weather has changed and there's seasonal patterns. And the USDA does not do a great job of controlling for those seasonal variations, so it's hard to interpret the data. So that's why. Any other questions here? Any other? Going once, going twice.